Hi, everyone. This is episode 2 of my Rating Dating Advice series. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the advice just be yourself and analyzing it and giving my opinion on it. So I'm sure you guys have all heard this advice at some point during your life, whether it's talking about social situations, trying to find a romantic partner. These are very common contexts where this advice will come up. So, the sentiment of this advice is basically that being authentic will lead to more dating success and that you don't have to put on a mask and try to be someone that you're not. So, this advice is actually very common in real life and in normie spaces online. So, you might hear this from an older person who's trying to give you advice, trying to encourage you, or you might just hear it from more blue pill minded normie people that you know. So you're often going to hear it from people that are trying to encourage you, people that are genuinely looking out for your best interests and want to see the best for you. And it contradicts a lot of the game and manosphere advice, which encourages guys to mold themselves and use tactics to have more dating success. So, talking about pros that come with this advice is that it discourages overthinking. And that's a really good positive because overthinking is a trap that a lot of guys get into, especially guys that spend a lot of time online. They read a lot, they watch a lot of videos about dating, but they never take action, you know? Telling someone that just being themselves is enough will often make them more likely to take action because otherwise they're just going to get trapped in a loop where they try to mold themselves and research tactics that they can use when talking to women, like game, or try their best to improve their looks, improve their SMV, their sexual market value, through building themselves up rather than just putting themselves out there and trying their best to find a woman to date. So, another pro is that authenticity is a plus. It is objectively a plus to be authentic. No one likes someone who isn't authentic on its own. That isn't on its own, it isn't a positive. People will like people that are not authentic though sometimes when they have other things going through them, right? There are a lot of people that are famous that are very obviously transparently fake. But, they're still charismatic. They still have a lot of money. They still have a lot of status. But on its own, authenticity won't make people dislike you. It'll actually make people like you more. So, that's a positive. And it promotes that you are good enough as you are, which is something that you have to believe to have dating success. If you don't believe that you're good enough, it's not going to be an easy road for you. It's going to be a very difficult time for you talking to women because they can kind of see that you don't have self-belief, right? They're going to be able to see it through your behavior through your mannerisms, and you're probably going to be less likely to take action if you don't believe in yourself. So you have to believe that you're fundamentally good enough to have success with dating. And another pro is that your true self is likely to be liked by at least someone. This is true. I'm talking more about personality here because, there's some people that are pretty objectively ugly. Like physical attractiveness, I'd say, is more objective than the behavioral attractiveness, like your personality being attractive. You know, if you're shy and socially awkward, that's not the most liked personality. But I mean, it is objectively true that there probably is someone out there who would like that. You know, there's a lot of variance in terms of what people find attractive in a personality. Even though, on average, I think it's fair to say that women like certain personality traits. Most women like a guy who's confident, dominant to some extent, etc. And another pro is that studying strategies isn't as important as putting yourself out there, especially for beginners. This is definitely true. You know, and you're not going to learn half as much from reading online as you will from real life interactions. Real life interactions are going to teach you most of what you know. They're going to teach you most of what works for you, right? Because this online advice isn't tailored to you specifically. Through interacting in real life. You're going to find out what strategy works for you, what approach works for you. And even beyond that, you have to put yourself out there to even see any success at all. So those are the pros. There are a fair number of pros to this advice, and here are the cons. So a lot of guys are generally not attractive to most women, even if they're authentic. This is objectively true. If you're like, 3 out of 10 in the face, and like you're morbidly obese, and like you have autism, you know, you don't groom yourself, you don't shower, then you're not going to be attracted to most women, even if that is your authentic self. And another con to this is that game advice often does work. So there is some general advice that works when it comes to game that you should follow. Like not being too needy, being able to show intent, to be confident, have confident body language, display high value through your actions. This advice is going to work, right? It's going to give you better results once you're actually, getting experience. But if you're just sitting at home, then like game advice isn't going to do much for you. And a lot of guys need to work on their SMV actually before they can see success. So, like I said before, if you're morbidly obese, then you need to lose weight. As a guy, you can't really afford to be morbidly obese and expect to have any kind of dating life at all unless you're like super rich or super high status. So a lot of guys objectively need to work on their SMV, and I would say the line to where it's possible to have success in the West would be being at least a 4 out of 10. A 4 out of 10 can see dating success. If you're below a 4, then you're certainly not going to see dating success unless, you have certain mitigating circumstances that I already mentioned. So rating this advice, I would say it's C tier. It's a mix of good and bad because, this is really good for beginners, people that are trapped in thought loops, and it's also encouraging. It's genuinely encouraging, genuinely affirming, but also, there are a lot of things that you need to read up on, or learn for yourself, certain lessons that you need to learn about what's actually attractive to women and will yield more dating success. Just being yourself isn't optimal, even though it's a good starting point. Being authentic and being confident that you are good enough as you are is essential to having success. But later on, you need to adopt some sort of strategy in order to date successfully as a man. So thanks for watching, everyone. This was a shorter episode, but yeah, if you have any suggestions for dating advice that I should review or analyze, leave it in the comments below. Thanks for